Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Caffeinated Librarians. Today, we're talking about the King Arthur legend movie.
It's not Irish.
It's not Irish, but I can't do a British accent. All right, let me try again. Hello, mate.
Oh
No.
my
Yes.
Can't do it.
No.
Oh, you want to know something messed up?
I do.
If it's contemporary, he would have been speaking French.
Yeah.
Oh.
Lou.
Ah,
French.
oui.
No.
Okay, welcome to another episode. I can't do it. I can't do it.
I think
Welcome.
we're pretty good.
Thank you. To another episode of the Caffeinated Librarians. Today, we're discussing a movie based on the Arthurian legend of... What's the sword?
Excalibur.
Excalibur, there it is. I knew it. King Arthur, Legends of the Sword. This is part of our movies that were underrated picks, right?
I don't know. It's just
Our
movies.
favorite-
That's what you
Movies?
called it yesterday, and I kind of liked that.
I said, like, you could pick your favorite or something you thought was, like, underrated or,
Yeah.
like...
Would you, Ben, you gave me a look. Would you not say that this was underrated by
I would
most?
completely agree with you.
And
I
would
just
say
want
the
in.
movie we discussed, We Are Little Zombies, was underrated. I'd say the movie that I picked, which no spoilers, it was underrated. Would you?
Simona picked Spirited Away.
Spirited Away.
Maybe not as underrated.
No.
I mean, it only won the
underrated at all.
Academy Award.
Yeah.
Maybe not as
It
underrated.
only
Not underrated at
made
all.
history.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I didn't realize we were doing an underrated series. I assumed
I
it
don't
was
think
like
we did.
films
I
that we
weren't.
liked.
No, we
picked it
weren't.
I just pitched it as, like, favorites or, like, just a movie you wanted to pick.
Okay,
and then we
yeah.
started
So
doing a lot more
You
picks.
have made the brief.
So,
So
yeah.
it's okay.
So
Okay.
it's part of that series. So this was Kathleen's pick.
Katie.
And, Katie.
Katie.
Right. Katie, of course.
Catherine?
Now,
I'll throw my shoe at you.
Katie is going to introduce...
That was real anger.
This
I
film-
felt that.
Katie is going to introduce this film, and the one thing I have to ask before you do that is how historically accurate was this movie?
None. Not at all. But it's a great
But yet
movie.
you like it.
I do.
But
And
Wait,
I'm
you're
gonna
telling me
venture.
a snake didn't eat those people?
But I also think technically with the legend of King Arthur, I think you could kind of get away with not necessarily being historical because essentially if you want to be really historical, he's supposed to be during like the Roman or
He's
latter
just,
half.
like, not real at all,
Yeah,
right?
that was the joke.
No, because he's supposedly based on a person who did live.
Arthur,
like,
Arthur Castus, right?
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Y'all are learning me. Oh.
yeah, so like, but I will say those with King Arthur, since he's also technically the one that we know is a myth. I think you could set it in any time, and I don't think it would really take away from the enjoyment of the film.
Yeah, my only Arthurian knowledge is Sir Gawain, so I can really help out on these notes, so I appreciate all that.
And we talked about The Green Knight a year ago.
Yes,
we did.
Watch that episode if you haven't.
So, Katie,
Yes, sir.
introduce the movie.
So we watched King Arthur: Legend of the Sword.
Aye! Sorry.
That was
Sure.
fine. It's only bad when it's like that sort of thing, yeah.
Directed by Guy Ritchie, and starring a plethora of actors that are really good in their roles, and it's the Arthurian legend told in a very different way, which I really like because it's just different than what has been told. It's not told from the point of view from Merlin. It's not told from the point of view of some offshoot character looking in from like the outside. Yeah.
It's laddish.
Yeah.
Lads of the Round Table. I think that was like a review caption.
Now, why would that be a negative review?
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
the real question.
And it's out of all of the Arthurian movies I've seen, like I really love 2004's version of King Arthur with Clive Owen, Keira Knightley, because
And Ray Winstone.
and Ray Winstone
We
And
love
Mads
Ray
Mikkelsen.
Winston.
and Mads Mikkelsen
And Hugh Dancy.
yes,
And
and
Stannis Baratheon.
Keira Knightley.
Aye.
yes.
I always get Stannis confused with the guy who played Roose.
Oh.
Well, Bruce Bolton was in this one.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
thought he was Stannis at first.
Yeah.
So
And Ray Stevenson.
And Ray Stevenson.
Not that I haven't seen. I've only watched the movie like 50 times.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah. So, and I mean, that comes from a historical place. The movie we watched does not. It's very much in the fantastical genre. But Londinium, which is the ancient city of London, was an ancient Roman city in Britain, or Britannia, as it was called.
stupid question.
Sure.
Britain was called Albion at some point, right?
I think England is still kind of called Albion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I've never heard of that.
Alba is the Gallic word for Scotland.
Isn't that Jessica's
So-
last name?
You're not wrong. Yeah,
No, you're not wrong.
No one can discredit you on that claim.
And Fable.
History.
We all played Fable, right?
Yeah,
That takes
that's
place-
why
yeah.
I was thinking about that, because I played Fable and I was like, that's a cool world name, and then I took a medieval history class and like Albion came up and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's where they got
Yeah,
it from.
so I mean, it's like I think it's more of like the regional area of Great Britain as an island.
So, Katie
Yes.
and Ben,
Yes.
as the two that have seen this movie several times and love this movie, you know, one of the things that was brought up was the fact that it was pretty poorly received in theaters.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you guys want to discuss that a little bit? Because I'll say, to begin with, without getting into too much just yet, I think the movie is better than the reviews make it out to be.
Well, I think this question could be better directed towards Ben,
I-
since I don't really know that much about the reviews that it got, because I just loved the movie and I ignore
Yeah.
all of that.
I liked this movie.
Yeah.
I wasn't like insane about it or anything, but I liked it. And
Yeah.
like, how did this get like in the 20s?
Yeah,
like
I mean,
what happened?
It's not like it, yeah, exactly, right. That's kind of what I'm going at here is like it's not like it got a 50% or a 60%, which you could see a movie like this getting, because maybe this just isn't some people's cup of tea, but like it got like just shredded to bits.
Yeah.
And it's really not that. It's really not bad.
The
It
music-
actually
the
is
music
very
is
entertaining.
incredible.
Oh yes.
Yeah, the
music
like
is
I
great.
was talking to Ben about the music.
One of the sequences that I love was when Arthur and his friends are running away, like they there's the failed assassination attempt and they're running through the city, and the feeling of claustrophobia that you get as you see them squeezing in between alleys, but the music is so incredible in that moment. Like it makes you like you get anxious for these characters. Like, will they make it? I thought the music was incredible.
Yeah.
Did Littlefinger piss anybody else off the whole movie? He's like a good guy in this, but everything he said, I was like, yo, he's gonna be a bad guy. He's gonna turn on them. Like, I know it, but he didn't, because he's a good guy, and this
Yeah.
isn't Game of Thrones.
I love seeing
Goose
Littlefinger
Fat.
pop up and
Goose
stuff.
Fat Bill.
Yeah.
He's a nice
No,
presence.
he just pissed off the people he was around.
Good shot with an arrow, though.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Did you
shot
love
with an
that
arrow.
scene where he says, "Do you think when they're setting up, he says, do you think he'll even be able to see us?" And you hear the first arrow
Yeah.
connect, and they start screaming, "You could have killed us!" And he shoots the second one, and you hear it connect. He goes, "Yeah, I'll be able to shoot it."
Note about the music. It's Daniel Pemberton, who
okay.
did one of Ben's favorites,
Steve Jobs.
He did Into the Spider-Verse,
Yeah.
Oh.
and I think
I
he
have
actually.
the soundtrack to this movie on my iTunes.
Yeah. It,
And I
it
listened
replaced
to
Rocky
it.
4 as my workout
Yeah.
music.
Oh.
Yeah, I listen to
I
it
think
constantly.
he got to start doing the music for Little Big Planet, the PlayStation game.
That's
Nice.
so cool.
Oh.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
It's a fun game.
Yeah. So Ben, why do you think? Because we were going to ask you about the ratings. Like, do you have a theory as to why?
I mean, it happens to one movie every
Yeah.
every summer season. There's always one movie that kind of gets unfairly maligned. Like, it had a reputation, I think, of being over budget, and people are kind of bag on Guy Ritchie a little bit. There is, like, I mean, if I want to go tinfoil hat, Guy Ritchie is one of the directors that's, you know, like Taylor Sheridan, like Clint Eastwood, that's kind of quietly known as a little more right-leaning. And it's a movie that's produced by Steven Mnuchin, who's the Secretary of Treasury.
Though I will say, I think
Sure,
Mnuchin did Wonder Woman the same year too.
And he
So-
did
and
Batman
that got-
Batman vs Superman.
Yeah, but like
Did he
Wonder
do
Woman got
Fury
good
Road also?
reviews. Yeah, he did Fury Road. He
Yeah.
did one of my favorite movies, which
So-
Inherent Vice.
Oh, I still have to see that.
It's so good, but like I see his name in the credits, I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa, why is he on here? That's so big. Is the movie's like kind of against everything he's for? So it's like,
So, I mean, Hollywood critics tend to lean incredibly aggressively liberal, and I don't know. I don't think it did. It could have been a factor, but that's just tinfoil hat. And you have what's that one? John Carter that came out.
John Carter.
That was nowhere near as bad. It was actually pretty good.
Really?
You had Tomorrowland, which was nowhere near as bad as it was treated.
Because like that's Brad Bird.
Yeah.
And, like I know he's not really known for live action, but like dude has a great visual sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the movie got pretty bagged on. Maybe didn't deserve it. So there's always one movie every season that gets that treatment, and I think this one was it.
So, speaking on that, I'm not usually one that will I do read reviews. I always look at reviews. I don't usually let reviews stop me from watching something.
Mm-hmm.
Like Venom got crappy reviews. I loved Venom.
Venom's great.
But the thing that kept me from watching this was Charlie Hunnam. Now, let me explain why. And we've had a pre-show meeting about this, but I'm going to let my fans.
We've been having so many pre-show
We
meetings
have.
recently. We've got a brain trust going on. We're
They all know what I'm about to say, but my loyal fans don't. So, I watched about 15 minutes of the first episode of Sons of Anarchy, and I could not stand how Charlie Hunnam walked. I could not stand how he talked, and I could not watch the show. Now I have a friend who I really I value her opinion. I trust her, and she told me just get through it because the show's worth it. And I said to her, "Does he ever change the way he walks?" She said no, and I said I cannot do it.
How did he walk?
It is goofy.
Really?
It-
Is he like doing like a John Wayne thing?
It's
Like-
almost like he's like
He's walking like his shoulders are much bigger than they
Oh
are.
wow.
It
Okay.
is bad. Now, let me just say, in this and in The Gentleman, he's able to speak with his normal accent.
Yeah.
I think Charlie Hunnam just can't do both. He
Like-
can't
Walking and
talk.
chewing gum.
Yeah, he just can't do it. But he was great in this. He was great in The Gentleman.
Yeah.
Both Guy Ritchie.
Yeah, just let the guy talk in his normal accent because then he can walk normally. In fact, he looked cool in this. I looked at
Yeah.
his workout routine and his diet for this, and I was like, I want to do what he's doing. And then I saw what he did, and I was like, no, I can't do that.
So apparently that opening segment where he starts air punching, they coined it on set, called it the 1,000 punches, and it's what he would do to rev himself up
Yeah.
for his scene. And
I was tired just watching
they
it.
just recorded it
Yeah,
and used it in the movie.
nice.
That's cool. Yeah.
I tried it once. I got up to 280, and I was like, I can't keep going.
I think I get up to 16.
Well, 1,000? I mean, you might as well. 280 and 16, basically the same thing. 1,000? He did 1,000. No way. I could never.
No.
I will
At
say-
that pace, no.
About Sons of Anarchy, I was fond of him by the end of season 1.
Oh yeah.
So even with the accent,
Yeah.
he still has enough of this sort of internal charisma about him. Whatever that's
Yeah.
charisma's the wrong word.
Did
but,
you watch Crimson Peak?
Oh, he was horrible in that.
That's what I heard
Right?
too. I don't even remember him in that.
Because the problem is he's trying to do an American accent, and he sounds like, "I will take care of you." You can see he's struggling to really do, and which a lot of people say American accents aren't really easy to pull off. Some people succeed, some just fail miserably. He could have just been Australian, and I think it would have been okay.
I think the best is when they sort of lean into it a little bit and Christian Bale in American Psycho, his American accent's really weird, but like it fits perfectly for the character because like he's already a weird facsimile or whatever you say that word.
Colin Farrell, I think, on an interview recently said that that's the accent he hates doing the most is standard American. And he says, because it doesn't even exist. He says there's regions and everyone speaks a little differently.
He did a great voice as the Penguin. I will give him that.
I love that he's like a GIF? I'm sorry, I'm showing my age. When he's like, come on!
Come on, what are you showing me that for?
Sorry, Charlie, we're off topic. Charlie Hunnam got the role because I think it was Henry Cavill and I think it was Colin Farrell, and there was one other really famous actor, and Charlie Hunnam told Guy Ritchie, put us all in a room and let us fight. And whoever wins the fight.
Right. Charlie, I like
and Guy Ritchie said, screw it, you got it.
I don't think either of them could have pulled off being like Lad King Arthur.
No.
No.
I like, honestly,
I think
can't.
Henry Cavill probably would have kicked his ass, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would have won that fight, but like he wouldn't have pulled it off.
No,
Yeah.
it's like he's like Charlie Hunnam. Because I can never.
I think it's just Hunnam, right? It's just Hunnam.
Oh, I was saying, is it Hunnam?
Is it Hunnam?
I think it's just Charlie Hunnam.
I don't know how to say his last name, and I apologize for
I've
that.
never heard anyone say it,
No
so
problem.
I
Yeah.
can't.
Yes, that's a good point.
Yeah. So I mean, he embodied the role of Arthur, and it's like I can't see Arthur being played by anybody else other than Charlie Hunnam. Like I can't see anyone playing Geralt other than Henry Cavill. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, Cavill was quite good in Guy Ritchie's The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
I have to see that.
Colin
was.
Farrell was excellent in The Gentleman. I
I
think,
have to see The Gentleman.
I called him Australian.
I'm
He's
sorry,
not Australian.
I did not like The Gentleman.
No, he's English.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was just I was having a bad night, but it was just annoying.
Well, I watched it at the very beginning of the pandemic. I think we were all having a bad night. It came out in theaters in January of 2020 and came out on digital like late February or March.
I just thought it was fun. It was just a fun movie. It got a little weird with the like anti-drug PSA kind of thing at the end. Like,
I thought the drill video stuff was pretty funny.
yeah.
I don't know. I just like I remember getting to that scene where like they're vomiting in the restaurant, and I was just like, why the hell am I watching this?
What is that?
Oh, it was in The Gentleman.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think Guy Ritchie, and I think what this movie did shockingly was played to Guy Ritchie's strengths in a way I never thought
Yeah,
they would.
right.
Yes, agreed.
And
I'm not a big Guy Ritchie head. I like Snatch.
Same.
I tried to watch Lock, Stock like 5 different times in high school. Could never get through it. I get like 20 minutes in, and then I'd be like, I don't know what's going on anymore. And none of these guys are speaking words I understand.
Put subtitles on.
It's funny that you said we should have pre-show meetings more often, because this is a great segue to the next thing that I was going to bring up. So I do like Guy Ritchie, but I think when I think Guy Ritchie, I think Snatch.
Yeah.
Like that's.
Oh, I don't think
the-
that when I think Guy Ritchie, I think Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, interesting.
once again, another thing that surprisingly plays to his strengths.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've seen Sherlock Holmes.
That was
You
the one
should.
with RDJ.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
see
and
that.
Jude Law as
Jude Law.
as
Oh,
Watson.
Jude Law was eating it up in this movie.
Yeah.
I liked that performance.
I have to say I love Jude Law as a villain. I think he plays the villain very well.
But
You
what-
should check out The Young Pope.
Oh, so good.
Oh, yeah.
Such a great series.
That's
That was one of my
crazy.
recommendations last year when we were talking about TV series.
Oh, yeah?
That was on one of my 5.
Oh, we can go back to
Yeah.
it.
What was great about Jude Law in this was that he wasn't just delicious, joyful villain. Like, he was suffering for
Yeah.
everything he was doing,
Yeah.
and he just couldn't let go of the power. But every choice he made was a heavy choice. He was not, and just nice touches, like he was never worthy of the sword. So when he uses it to cut that snake, and it lodges into the pillar.
Yeah.
He can't pull it out again.
I love it.
And it takes Arthur to pull the sword out.
That was an amazing moment. I was gushing over that moment with Lou and Katie when, because I love the mage character.
Oh, yeah.
I love her
A strong
Yeah,
female
she's very-
character.
to death. I love her so much.
She's also one of my favorite characters. In
And
the
I
movie.
love that moment where, when she possesses the animal and her eyes shift to whatever animal she's possessing. So when he chopped off Tiny Snake, I was like, oh my God, they're done for. All of a sudden, Gigantic Snake bursts into the room, and I'm like, this is awesome. Terrifying, because I have a whole scale issue thing. But legit, one of the best scenes ever. I was like, you are awesome. And also, Charlie, I apologize. I called you Australian. You're not Australian. You're English. I apologize. Yeah, but I
The English
loved
are
that
the
scene.
people who'd get really upset if
Yeah.
you called them Australia.
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I loved that moment.
Yeah.
That was
And also
brilliant.
The soundtrack's blasting at all the right moments as
Yeah.
the snake's
That
tearing
folk
through.
song rules.
Yeah.
And what I really
Even
liked,
he's had dubstep drops to it too, but it works.
what I really liked about the mage character is that she's a badass woman without playing up to the stereotypes
Yeah.
of being a strong female character.
Yeah, that's what I appreciated too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved
Jude Law been in less movies than I realized.
Jude Law.
Yeah.
I loved. I'm sorry, I lost that whole segment at the end with the snake biting him, so he was immune to the snake when it showed up, and
Oh.
everything sort of checked out. Like that
Yeah.
snake was introduced in the Darklands earlier on. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't random, and I think a lot of the accusations against this film was that it was just too random and nothing
yeah.
connected.
I love the
Nothing
Darklands
was
part.
random.
I like what it says, he should fear, it's terrifying. He should fear it. It's just sequence after sequence of him avoiding
So-
every monster known to man.
I not to interrupt you, Ben, but what I love about about when he's going to the Badlands and he sees dryads coming out of the trees, it's they're incorporating Celtic lore within this movie, and it just ties into the legend of Arthur and how it's all really set in the psyche of the culture of Britain and Scotland and Wales, and it's all very much a Celtic lore movie.
Mm-hmm.
So that Darkland sequence, somewhere on the cutting room floor, is 25 more minutes of it. It was a
Really?
huge sequence in the movie that just got cut. And a 3-hour version of this movie was the original cut.
Wow.
And it was one of 5 planned films that, because of the box office shellacking, just went away.
Oh.
If I became independently wealthy, I would give my money to Guy Ritchie to make part 2.
Would you
Just
want to
to
be
see-
in it?
That's the question I
I
had
wouldn't need
asked.
to, just want to see it.
Yeah.
Not even as an extra?
I'd be an extra.
Yeah.
That's the question I had asked Katie. Was it sure seems like they were setting up for a second one
They were.
at the end
Yeah.
of the first one.
5 movies planned out. It was going to be
Yeah.
5, and I was really
Just
hoping for that.
Yeah.
That was critics should be nicer, because I think also movies like King Arthur, movies like Robin Hood, they just no one wants to see any more of them. And I mean, if my teen film night here for that I was doing last spring means anything, they thought it was boring as hell.
Which one?
Really?
Yeah, King
I'm
Arthur.
surprised.
Really?
They were just like, whatever, this is nothing.
Because you know what I think it is too, and I don't mean to sound snobby or I think maybe with most audiences, I don't know. I think this film, you have to go on the journey with him, and there are moments when there's no action where they're talking, not that it's too, I think the pace it moves along nicely.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes, especially when you look at a lot of the classic Hollywood films, there are moments where everyone is just talking. Wasn't that some of the criticisms of Game of Thrones? I was watching this one show that says just to see people talking and more
That's
talking.
TV, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
There's subtlety. There's
No.
gamesmanship happening.
No, I definitely agree. I think one of my favorite movies is 12 Angry Men, and it's 12 men of a jury. It takes place in one room.
And they're angry.
Yeah,
You've never seen the movie,
I know,
have you?
I'm joking.
No,
You
it's
don't have to.
yeah, it's a brilliant film, but that's a case in point where there's no high action, but there still are high stakes, and you feel the tension. And I think maybe modern audiences, because they were talking about, like I was reading even about songs, how over the years songs get shorter and shorter and shorter because of the attention span of most people. Songs need to be shorter, even like. So I wonder if that's what it kind of is too. Maybe most audiences, that's just not the movie they're going to
Now,
sit down and watch. I don't know.
Building on that, I was listening to a podcast the other day, one of my favorite film podcasts, and the hosts are more into like weirder stuff, but they were talking about Tarantino, and like these are guys who sort of are like not over Tarantino, but they're like, yeah, you know, I was really into him as a teenager. He's still good, but like not my favorite anymore. And like, but like they were like, yeah, it's sort of weird that like he became like so ubiquitous and popular because his movies are long, they're shaggy, and most of it is just people sitting around talking and not even about things too relevant to the plot, just talking. And like, and so like I do think there is still desire for that sort of like luxuriation in a film, but like it comes through in different ways, which is odd. Yeah.
And it's funny that you say that, and maybe, maybe it's just different for, the five of us, but that was my favorite part of Mulholland Drive, was the scene when they're just sitting there in the diner talking. Like, I think and this is kind of going back to what I was trying to say about the Guy Ritchie stuff before. I think some of the movie, I liked the movie. I think some of the movie falls flat because you have this injection of Guy Ritchie style with some of the more comedic back and forth scenes where things might be flashing back and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And that stuff is engaging and it's high energy. And then you get to some of the other scenes that to me fell flat a little bit because he didn't inject that high energy into all of the scenes.
Is there an example like of one that you thought, one of the flat scenes that you thought?
I mean, I don't know that I could say right now.
Oh, okay.
But the high energy scene where he's going and where he's talking to the guy in the black cloak and
the black leg.
Yeah, the black leg.
Bruce Bolton.
Bruce Bolton. Yeah, with and then they're talking about the Viking and stuff like that. Very high energy, fast paced and stuff like that. We talked about it yesterday. The scene where he is fighting off all those guys with Excalibur, and he's finally seems like he's wielded it and stuff like that. Even that to me, even though we talked about how it doesn't really look that great right now, looking back on it high energy. You know what I mean? It was different. It was Guy Ritchie. Guy Ritchie was putting his flavor on this classic story. Some of the other stuff was just kind of like the serpent scene, high energy. Mm-hmm. Some of the other stuff was just like, some of it fell flat for me.
What about the moment? One of the moments I liked was when Jude Law's character summons the sirens. What did you think of that scene?
That stuff was okay.
Okay.
Another thing with Jude Law was I didn't care enough about him. I didn't think that they showed him enough for me to really care about him. You see his daughter once, he stabs his daughter. You're like, does he really even love his daughter? Like, he's crying about his daughter, but you don't see anything to know that he loves his daughter other than the fact that he's crying when he kills her. Like, show me a scene with her first. The only other scene that she's in, she just like kind of walks by and she looks creeped out, probably because she knows her father killed her mother. Mm-hmm.
And then there's one scene where he's telling her to put the bird back in the bird cage, but it doesn't check out because I'm sure there was like more scenes cut with them.
Probably.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're not wrong about that.
Yeah, and again, but that's not like a deal breaker for me. Yeah. That's not a 31% on Rotten Tomatoes. You know what I mean? That's like there's a little lag in the movie here.
Okay.
I think to your point about the scene with the underground, what'd you call him?
The sirens.
Yeah, I was crazy about that. This movie,
I like that. They look like Dark Souls enemies. Like
it was so about the magic of it all. And
Yeah.
I think that opening segment with Uther Pendragon, and
I love that opening scene.
I don't think there's been a more epic opening scene in a movie since.
And again, high energy.
Yeah.
Right?
But
So
like the
I guess the
slow
whole thing
pace
can't be high energy,
that
but-
I think the song is called "The Politics and the Life" that's playing during that, and Uther basically sacrificing his beautiful horse as he like leaps off the bridge.
Oh yeah, my
to,
sister
like,
commented like he just killed his horse. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah. I just had a thought, and about like the high energy scenes, like the scene when Jude Law's character, and I apologize, I can't remember what his is it
Vortigern.
Mordred? No, Vortigern. When he's talking with the sirens, the two younger sirens, they're constantly moving. They're never really still for very long. Is that a way to sort of make it less static? So maybe it's a scene where he's literally just talking to them, basically, where I need you to do what you promised me. So it's essentially a chatting scene, And I was wondering, is that constant movement? I mean, one, it sort of depicts that these are beings that while they're beautiful, there's that ugliness underneath, they're like the tentacles. I thought was a great touch, because when I first saw them emerging from the waters, I didn't realize it was then going to go into, and then when all three of them appear, I thought, okay, that's well done. I thought the monster was going to be very different. So is that constant movement a way to kind of break the scene? Like another example, when you see Blade Runner, there's the scene when Harrison Ford.
My favorite scene,
I'm
where
not-
he shouts at his computer to enhance like 50 times in a row.
No, it's the scene when he goes to talk to this guy, like this corporate guy. I'm sure this is the movie, right? I'm sure this is the movie, and it's basically a guy. He watches the recording of the guy interviewing one of the replicants. They're not
Yes.
called replicants. Are they called replicants?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
That has escaped, and it's a very static scene. But there's that fan, and my teacher said that's done to sort of break up the static scene. She used a term, I can't remember what it's called. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I was kind of wondering, in a case like that where it's essentially a scene where Vortigern is talking, so there's not much action happening, is that why they're constantly, other than to demonstrate that's an aspect of their character, like the constant movement?
Maybe,
What I got out of that was these are these ancient magical creatures
Yeah.
that are just toying with this mortal.
Oh, okay,
And they're
all right.
cutting these deals. It's this
Yeah.
total give and take scene, but
Yeah.
really no matter what he gets to take,
Yeah,
they're winning. They don't get punished in this movie.
yeah.
Yeah,
They go on to live for thousands of more years
Yeah.
and make more deals and take more souls and
Yeah.
There's a sense of doom.
and they're just playing with them, right? as
Yeah, because they
him.
circle around him
He's
constantly.
no threat. He's no anything. They're
Yeah.
just kind of laughing at the little human.
The little man.
Yeah.
Which, to hop off topic quick, House of the Dragon, amazing at creating that sense of doom. And
Yes.
these characters are making decisions that will amount to nothing.
I can't wait to watch that series. I can't wait.
It was the last 3 episodes were top notch. I mean, the rest of the episodes were good too, but the last 3 were.
But if we
great.
think about what you're saying about like the moments that fell flat,
So maybe high energy is not the right word. Maybe I think there were scenes where Guy Ritchie set the tone, and there were scenes when he didn't.
so there's the epic opening, right? That lasts about 5.5 minutes. Incredible. Launches right into the piece right after and the betrayal of Uther Pendragon by Vortigern, right into the death of the mother, right into the 5-minute Guy Ritchie segment where he is
Yeah.
growing up, right into the Blackleg segment with the history with the Vikings and the Lady of the Night. And then I think there might be a little bit of a slowdown for a few minutes, but then we're right into he has to get on the boat and go grab the sword. So right into the pulling out the sword, right into the execution segment,
Yeah.
which is incredible, right into the rescue.
Yeah.
Then there might be a somewhat flat segment, but you're seeing the gorgeous Snowdonia that it was in Wales that it was shot in.
Yeah.
and then you meets Goose Fat, and I can see in the middle there it starts to slow a little bit.
I think you and I actually differ a little bit on the stuff leading right up to, and even him taking out the sword. To me, that fell flat a little bit for me. I thought that was a little anticlimactic.
When he takes the sword out,
When he takes the sword out.
Lightning strikes, the earth starts to rumble.
There
David
was-
Beckham yells.
Yeah. Oh yeah. David Beckham so randomly is
Who's
in
in
this
all
with a
of
big nose.
Guy Ritchie's movies, I think.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah.
My
Oh,
dad
that's the
asked.
thing?
Yeah.
My dad asked, is like, I know him. I said, yeah, it's David Beckham. Like, when I saw him, it kind of reminded me, I know this is going to be so bad. He got ripped for this. But Ed Sheeran's cameo
Oh
in
my
Game
God.
of Thrones, I feel so bad for. But then again, they didn't even attempt to make Ed Sheeran not look like Ed
No,
Sheeran.
they did
That's
a
kind of-
horrible job with
That's
that.
that's
I
kind
was
of what
fine
like
with the Ed Sheeran cameo.
this kind of
I
reminded
hated
me
it.
of. It's like I
hated
know
it.
this man. It's like.
I like Sigur Ros's cameo.
That's much better than great.
Yeah,
Oh,
that was great.
Jesus.
That was at a great
I'm
moment.
playing with this lens cap, and it finally
Yeah.
hit me.
But I loved another scene that I loved is when Arthur rejects the sword and he tosses it, and
The Lady of the Lake.
That's
Yeah.
sick.
I don't
That's
want to
another
interrupt you.
scene that fell flat for me, but it's because I don't know the lore. I don't know the story.
So
behind it.
essentially, the Lady of the Lake, and Katie can correct me if she was essentially given charge of the sword. She is the one
See,
that.
how are we supposed to know that? Though?
But I think what I would like. Okay, for example, I'll give a good example that happened to me when I was in college.
Somebody gave you.
No one
Power
gave me a
over
magic
sword?
sword. The minute I find a portal to a magical land, you will all be in on it. I think
it's the
certain
stone
things.
chambers around here.
Yeah, I think there's something like assumed knowledge. So Arthur is such a large part of Western civilization that it's assumed you know his story to one degree or another.
I knew Merlin
So yeah.
and the sword.
Yeah, so it's sort of like when I was in college, there was a reference to Adam and Eve. And there was a girl, she did not grow up in a religious family, and she asked my teacher, who was Adam and Eve? And my teacher treated it as if that's something you should know. And she was saying, I didn't grow up in a religious family, who is Adam and Eve?
Yeah.
Now, a part of me thought, okay, even if you aren't religious, not knowing Adam and Eve, like even if you don't know and God created man and then, like I understand all that, but Adam and Eve is like, it's part of sort of Western culture, but I don't think the teacher ever explained who they were. I don't know if I did
So
or
you're
someone
saying
else
I'm an
did.
idiot?
No, I'm not saying you're, no, honest to God, I'm not saying you're an idiot. I just believe that I hope you don't think I'm saying you're an idiot.
She's saying I'm an idiot.
I think
teasing.
there
I'm
is
joking. I'm joking.
Okay.
Continue, please.
There-
Yeah.
Richie's British too, so he might,
I think it's like
that might be a little more ingrained there.
because
than-
like Arthur is supposed to be the first king of what you know of as Britain. So mythologically, even some people even claimed historically, he is the first king of England. And his story, there's just something magical about, first of all, the whole egalitarian, that's the word, aspect of the round table where no one is the head, we are all equal. You know, that whole notion where he said, my knights, you are equal to me. You know, we sit at the round table together. So, like, I don't know all of, because there's a lot of Arthurian stories. Like, there's, like, the death of Arthur where, you know, obviously he dies and, you know, and there are people
Spoiler.
that believe that he will come back one day to bring Camelot back to sort of the world. And Camelot was supposed to be this egalitarian society, which, no, I don't think it really was, but so I think with a lot of things, there's assumed knowledge. So some things, like the Lady of the Lake, she's the one that sort of has like guardianship of the sword. But going back to that scene, what I loved was how her hand comes out from the puddle and she drags him in. And she was saying, I know you don't want to do this, but I'm going to show you why you cannot ignore
no.
your responsibility. And even the way her voice sounds, like as
As
she's
if,
dragging him
like,
deeper
in
and
his
deeper.
head.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful sequence.
Yeah.
And she shows him this is what will happen should you fail to sort of acknowledge your. It sort of reminds me of Aragorn to some extent, in the film at least, because in the book he accepts his responsibility. But Aragorn has those moments when he needs to be told, it's okay to fear, but you can't resort to inaction because this is what will happen. So I loved that scene.
It was very briefly touched upon, I think, by the mage, the story of Merlin making the sword, giving it to giving to the Lady of the Lake or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm. No,
Yeah.
you're right. Yep.
In the movie, but I would say that might be a slight failure of the storytelling to just assume that we would know. But I also understand that for an English person making an English movie for an English audience, why he would not have to fret too much about that.
They all.
I don't know much about Lady of the Lake, but I still felt it was effective. It just like I don't know.
It's a
the
watery
mythology
tart
behind
who
it,
launched a
but it's
scimitar at him.
But yeah, it's just kind of like, whoa, this is something very mystical happening here.
Brilliant.
And again, I'm not saying I disliked it. I'm just saying it wasn't.
No, I understand.
It wasn't something that. It wasn't one of the parts that stood out to me.
No, I understand. I can't. There are definitely films that I've watched where it's like, if you are not aware of the context, if you're like, whether it's historical, whether it's from a book, like you would say, that's beautiful, but the impact will not be the same. It's kind of like with the Harry Potter films. Obviously, from book to film, different media, you can't just make the film version of the book. But there are a lot of things where it's like, well, who's this character? Why should I care? What is this moment? Where if you've read the books, you know what that is. And I think with a lot of these things, the films were made for people that know the books. But I believe they should be done in such a way where even if you say, I have never read these books, I can still follow along and know what that is. With the Lady of the Lake, they briefly touch upon, by the way, Merlin made a sword. They don't really explain who Merlin is. And he entrusted it to this being that lives in the lake. Now, that's about all they tell you. But I would say for the purpose of the film, even if you didn't know who she is, I think within that scene, at least for me, you would still feel the impact of what she's telling him.
Yeah,
if that
100%.
makes any sense.
Yes.
But I do know what you're saying too, because for those who aren't familiar, without sounding too, what's the term that I'm looking for? Oh, crap.
Ignorant?
No, when like you have a character, even the exposition, without sounding, too much like exposition. I'm sorry.
No, it's just her going, ignorant.
Why did you just jump to ignorant?
That's what popped into my head. I'm sorry.
Without sounding like exposition. Like, can you imagine? Because there are moments like that in films where it's like there's that one character that pops into the screen and explains everything you need to know about a character.
In early Game of Thrones, when like Littlefinger wouldn't even be in frame, and then he'd just lean in and be like, "He's from House Clegane."
Yeah, that's where it's like I think you can get to that point where now it's bordering on. By the way, so but I know what you're saying. Where there should be a fine balance where you know enough about the character without it sounding like exposition. But I know what you're saying.
I keep bringing up House of the Dragon, but it's insane how much they've avoided exposition dumps. It's just like, wow.
Yeah.
How are you pulling this off?
Yeah.
I gotta watch that show.
Yeah, you do.
I'm so behind.
It's
Sorry.
very good.
But back to the segments. Think about this. And this is, I think, why this movie has not, I think, disappeared. Why people are still watching it. Why when it lands on Netflix, it becomes top 10, in the viewership for the chunk of time that it's there.
It got good audience scores.
So you have that opening segment, which is insane, followed right by the growing up as a child segment, which is insane, and that hysterical segment about the Vikings with Roose Bolton, which is just really well done. Then you have the taking the sword out of the stone, which I thought was pretty mighty. Then you have the execution moment in Rescue, which was pretty mighty. Then there's a lull, but then you have the Runlund-Yanim sequence where the failed assassination attempt, which is insane. Then they have the let's get rid of the sword sequence, which is insane. Then they have the snake bites you on the neck and you go face the king segment, which ends the movie, which is insane. It has these amazing segments that even if you're not watching the whole movie, you can go. You could land on one of those and you would watch, I think, for the rest of the time.
Did you like the reveal about who the stone is? That it was his father?
I loved that.
Cool. Yeah, I was down.
Yeah.
I love Eric Bana.
What I love... No, it's... I probably should
We
have
all love
segued into
Eric
that a bit
Bana's
better. But
seminal performance as the Hulk.
I just thought it was a good sort of reworking of the whole... Because I think in the original story, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, it's just a rock.
It is just a rock.
What I love is that you see that it's the father's ultimate or final sacrifice, and also an FU to his brother. Basically, you're not getting this sword. And, like, I loved the way that sequence was done.
Yeah.
That's a terrific sequence.
And I also liked how he fell into the harbor, so no one really knew where the sword was, so the sword created its own legend. What are you guys looking at?
I'm listening to you.
Okay.
What's the new movie by the guy who did La La Land?
Oh, Babylon. Yeah, it's like 3 hours
yeah.
something.
Oh, it's both 3 hours and 10 minutes.
Okay.
We're listening. We're just talking about, this is about other epics now.
I saw a headline that Avatar 2 is going to be 3 hours, 10 minutes.
And I wanted to
knew
say
Ben
that
would be
Babylon's
excited about
also
this.
3 hours and 8 minutes.
Oh.
As you
Okay.
were.
How that one's that long.
But you know what we did? We did it quietly without talking, so we didn't interrupt.
That's true, but
Except the whole show went off course.
just distracting. But so like the sword became kind of like a legend within the movie, within like the world of the movie, and then when like it's like almost like when the time came, the lake drained, and there's the sword, there's the stone, and it looks like it doesn't resemble a man, but it looks like a man. If that makes sense.
What I also love too is that the magical elements are still very much a part of the story. That's what I also appreciate too, that while London is advancing and progressing towards something else.
I liked that like there were like Roman ruins around. I think that was a really nice touch to sort of
yeah,
contextualize,
like while it's
like, when this is
progressing
supposed to be.
towards its future, there
Yeah.
still is a harken back to its past and that magical element, which I really love. It kind of reminds me of Mists of Avalon, which I've never read the book, but
the book is very long.
the whole notion of the old giving way to the new, but at the end, when the main character sees the Virgin Mary, she says, "I realized the goddess didn't leave; she just took a different form." So I don't know. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us for this discussion. We hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Please don't forget to like, hit subscribe. We appreciate it. Leave your comments because we enjoy reading those, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.